Welcome to Whose Story Is It? Where extraordinary lessons are hidden within everyday stories. Join us today in revealing the untold stories within a business leader's success. Enjoy as we uncover the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Whose Story Is It? So this is going to be an interesting one. A guy that's kind of been around the trees a few times. Super interesting from down in the I guess we'll call it the western half of the U.S. But thank you for the three listeners that are out there. Really appreciate it. But let's get this started, and give us a little bit of an intro.
Sure. I'm a soon-to-be 60 individual that lives in the Intermountain States. I've had three primary careers, of which I've returned to. I grew up on a dairy farm, and I spent many of my years in the mining and mineral exploration business. I also was involved in the hospitality industry, and I had bars and restaurants for about 15, 20 years, and I hosted the VIP for the Sundance Film Festival and had my first foray into entertainment in my early 20s when it was the U.S. Film Festival.
And what year was that? What year was that?
I was involved in the U.S. Film Festival from 84, 85-ish, and then the Sundance Film Festival from 86 until 2000, and about 15 to 18 different restaurants and bars in a couple of different locations.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure that was a lot of fun.
A little bit too much fun,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. A little too much
fun. Following that, my wife and I had a deal that once kids came along that I wasn't going to be in the bar business anymore. And
sure.
I had an opportunity as I was involved in early streaming media, and we were doing streaming media with real video as well as Akamai in the late 90s. I joined a streaming company early on, ended up doing a bunch of promotion of streaming events, did things with Ed McMahon and the first big star comic thing, and it's pretty funny to convince your wife that you miss her when she tunes into a stream that you insist she watches, and you're in a tuxedo in a pool with about 50 attractive women at the hotel at the Tropicana beauty pageant. Sure. In Vegas, but ended up with about 170 radio station websites that I was responsible with, and streaming. Had the unique opportunity of getting to know Mark Cuban and DeWitt Collier and the group with broadcast.com. And from that time, I've been involved in a number of different things that have taken me back and forth through the country, primarily working towards job creation in rural places. Spent a stint with a company that was launching the first OTT as well as VoIP and wireless internet in Bentonville, Arkansas, in conjunction with Walmart, doing a proof of concept that each Walmart's within about 50 miles of the rest of the populace of the United States, and they have fiber. And that was fun until we had an unceremonious huge flame out. and from that, I worked with a number of different radio station groups, coming up with some of the early stage programs to be able to do promotions for studios, both music as well as film, for promotion over about 40 different markets.
Wow.
Then
you get some interesting stuff back there.
It's been a fun run for sure.
Yeah, definitely sounds like it. Well, here's the actually only question I ask every single guest, and it is, how did you earn your first dollar that wasn't paid to you by a relative?
I was 15.
Okay.
I'd been working on the family dairy since I was 10, and I guess 85 cents an hour is good money, probably
sure.
Indication of my age, but
yeah.
I was kind of a social kid, and I had an opportunity to do three different things: shopper's guides, and I went and got the job myself. So basically, a periodical with coupons that I'd throw up onto people's board. But at the same time, I was introduced to Shackley vitamins.
Oh, sure. Yeah. MLM Shackley. Yeah, totally.
Come on, you might understand what state I'm from. That we won't go
Exactly. Yeah, that's great. No, that's awesome. What's funny? My parents both started or did Shackley for many years.
yeah.
Yeah, I was a big protein shake guy then. I remember that, and that's how I got introduced to it. It was a Shackley protein shake. I remember that little shaker too. Had that for me
I,
for
I,
years.
I, I sucked. I just gave it to my friends and my family, and I ended up in the hole. But it was a great experience, and
Yeah,
yeah, it was basically an opportunity to do that. Worked at grocery stores that was affiliated with our family, and things like that. And
yeah,
I was a young graduate, so I was off to college when I was 17. But
yeah.
yeah,
Good for
but
you.
yeah,
Good for you.
and
And
the whole time working on the farm, of course.
sure. Oh yeah. Well, you're always going to be doing that, right? Especially as a kid. Um, when you were growing up, what was um, what was the motivation for you? Like, why did you do things? Like, where was like what made you like? It's easy it's easy to answer that today. Like, oh, why do you get up in the morning, kind of thing, right? But I'm like, when you were 16, 18 years old, what made you get up in the morning?
Because I was told to. Um,
I had to.
uh, I grew up on about 10 acres of land in a hollow, and we had a reservoir and a creek and fruit trees and berries and vegetables. And part of my responsibilities some mornings would be go down to the creek and pull a fish out so we could have that for breakfast. And we had responsibilities and chores. My
Oh, sure.
parents were from the greatest generation, and
Yeah.
it they were certainly not baby boomers, but you're growing up in the Intermountain States, and you live on a plot of land. You help out as soon as you can walk,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I fell into the same patterns of faith and school, and my parents were both educators, so I mean I was reading by four.
Yeah.
It was kind of a family pact that you'd read the Harvard classics before you were 13. So it was an interesting upbringing,
Yeah.
from some parents that my dad's family, nobody had even finished high school before his
Yeah.
generation. All the kids got college degrees.
Do you remember the first book you read?
Book or kids book?
No, like first what you would call adult book.
Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. I was 7.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's really interesting that you can actually remember that because most people don't remember like the first book they read. You know, like they're like, I don't know what the
Yeah.
first book it was. Yeah, that's good. Good for you.
It was
Uh,
a challenge from one of my cousins.
if the if you look back in the last 50 years, right? So let's say 40 years. Look back the last 40 years. Is there anything that you regret not saying to someone?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I probably, going back almost exactly 40 years, would have told my parents how much I loved them and cared for them because I became somewhat estranged sooner
Okay.
than later.
So, yeah, interesting.
So,
And
yeah.
how were you feeling at that point? Look at yourself 40 years back. Like, what was the what was your feeling about just your parents? Was it a like what did how did you feel at that point?
I'd made some determinations that I didn't have the same theological belief, and
Oh,
they weren't necessarily happy that their 21st year, 21, 20-year old, two
sure.
3-year old son had the biggest bar in the state that I live in, and that I was perhaps living a lifestyle of hedonism in a ski town that they probably didn't approve of.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, we were still cordial, but we didn't really bond as son and parents for a few years after that. I would have changed that, and I would have done it earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you do for fun? What's the fun part of your life? What do you do?
I ski. Um,
Okay, that's good. Still ski.
and I'm not nearly as good as I used to be because I'm fat and arthritic.
Sure.
But it's a goal to get at least 40 days in each.
Oh wow, 40
Year.
days. That's a lot for. I
Yeah,
mean,
and my target this year is 60. Back when I was younger, if you didn't get to 100, you were a slacker.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. You're right.
it's a little bit different. I'm not younger anymore.
I spent 1 year after college in Vail, right,
Uh,
and did the ski bum thing with one of my best friend, and he had been there for a couple of years already, and so I went there for just one season, and I skied 108 days. Right, that was the that was the thing. You had to ski 100 days, so it was great. It was wonderful. It was good time was had by all. That was for sure.
um, I
Yeah.
mean, ton of outdoor stuff. Our family owns a cabin about 2 hours to the southwest of us, southeast of us. So go down there as much as we can, and I'm very involved in a number of different. I don't know if I'd call it fun, but it's what I do. I'm pretty much an advocate for bipolar, autism.
Yeah, I saw that.
I'm a volunteer with a group called Otacon, and I've been a proponent of helping out with neurodiversity for quite some time. And I'm frequently asked to speak because for some reason people think I'm competent.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, I go to and attend and produce a number of events.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The over the last 20, over the last 20 years, what do you think? What are the pick out two things that you think changed the most in the last 20 years for you?
Number one, I became more cause oriented, and number two, I acknowledged and embraced that you have to have the engagement of resources from government,
Yeah.
educational institutions, and nonprofits. Prior to that, I felt like I was invincible, and I didn't work that way anymore. But as I was getting a little bit older, I realized that you kind of have to play within the institutional values of our society.
If you had a crystal ball, so let's say you have a crystal ball, and it could tell you the truth about yourself, your life, your future, or anything else, what would you want to know?
Besides what's actually going on in my noggin, what motivates me? I got to tell you, sometimes my family and friends are appalled by what appears to be my lack of concern for personal compensation. But I honestly believe in the power of social currency, and with many times anything that I've given of my time or efforts, it always comes back 3 to 4 fold. So I don't know what they're talking about. The best thing that you can do is give of yourself because it'll generally come back to you.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean it's almost without a fail. Like almost without a fail, will come back.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe the same thing. I really do believe that if you, I'm a big value guy. Like, hey, if I provide value to other people, then it obviously is going to come back to me, right?
Yeah.
At some point in time. What would you say is your greatest accomplishment thus far?
My children and my wife.
Yeah. What
Um,
about your greatest business accomplishment?
I'd have to say it's the breadth of the work that I've been involved with. I've been on the periphery of some amazing things that are commonplace to people. The first OTT, the first PVR, which we now know as DVR, the first MUX that would combine spectrum, early iterations of wireless internet. I was part of the team scrambling to get the licensing rights for Bluetooth when it first came on board. I mean, I've had a wonderful opportunity of having a lot of periphery, but probably the greatest thing that I've done in business is what I'm continuing to do now, and that's working with rural communities and different entities that work with rural communities to create employment opportunities, to create opportunities of keeping capital at the local level versus everything going to the urban level.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'll do till I die.
Yeah. Good for you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a small town, right? I did grew not too far from where you are. I grew in Delta, Colorado, so
Yeah.
just outside of Grand Junction. So, yeah, the rural thing is a thing. It's really interesting. And then even before that, when I was a little kid, we grew up in a really small town outside of Wichita, Kansas, called Rose Hill, and that was a one stoplight city, right? That was, you know, there was just it was one stoplight where there was from K through 12, there was 256 kids.
Yeah.
So very small. Yeah. But yeah, I think there's actually a lot of opportunity that can happen in those small cities. You know, I call them small Western cities. There's lots of them. There's smart people there. It's just they don't have the same resources that you would have in Seattle or LA or Chicago or San Francisco or all those things. Just
Cool story along those lines. One of the original team members with Google, which is of course now Alphabet, is a guy named Matthew Dunn, and he was the community officer for Google for years, right up until when the Alphabet split came on. And he grew up in a very small town in Vermont, and he went back home, and he ran for governor of Vermont, and he started a nonprofit called the Center on Rural Innovation, which is ruralinnovation.org.
mhm.
Amazing guy. He's been in the thick of the biggest, informatic organization, data organization there is, and he wanted to give back. And so now, 6, 7 years after the foundation of this nonprofit, I think they execute 50 to 55% of all EDA grants, Economic Development Agency grants, or
Wow, really?
CARs. And it's plain and simply because they can engage with the community, they can engage with new opportunities, education, and then also, most importantly, in my humble opinion, is being able to keep community capital where it is versus just treating people that live in small towns as commodities, which has frequently
Yeah.
been the case in the past.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Um, what in your business life would you want to change today?
Oh, that one's simple. I thought I was too cool for school. I was going into my senior quarter at the University of Utah, and I was making a bundle of dough, and I had a couple of
Sure.
companies and stuff like that, and I just thought I was too cool for school. I didn't finish college. I mean, I
Really,
still
you didn't finish. You're so close to never finish it, huh?
and papering it up would have been kind of cool, but at some certain point, I mean,
Yep.
where I was already engrossed in things. But is it a regret on my part that I didn't actually paper up? Absolutely. But I've been a big booster at
Yeah.
the college that's north of me,
Sure.
and
Exactly.
I've actually been on. I'm sitting on a committee for the governor's office in the state that I live in that works on pathways with everything from workforce services to the different divisions of higher education for years. And so, even though I'm not papered up, I think I've done okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
but I regret not having that paper. And all my kids, by the way, are completely
Yeah.
on their way, which is wonderful.
Exactly. How do you think just operating a business has changed over the last 10, 12 years? Like what's your like if you could say here's a couple things that I think have been major shifts in the last say pick 10, 12 years since say 2010 about operating or starting,
Sure.
that world of business. Like what do you think is the
Number one would be remote working. And with remote working, we now refer to it as AI since there's GUIs for it, but the ability to use machine learning to augment the human ability.
yeah, I would I think the remote working has been a huge shift over
Yeah.
the last several years. I think it just makes some of this stuff so normal,
Yeah.
which really helps out operating a business. And again, in my opinion, like it just makes it easier. you know,
It's
you
it's difficult. Sorry to cut you off. That was very rude of me. But it's difficult to supplant the actual experience to be in contact with person face to face. But at the same time, before we had streaming and some of the original things that we had, all you had was a phone, and so the imagination and what you would lose from the psychographic makeup of who you were talking about with just voice only, it does make a difference. But I still think it has to be a balance of in person as well as remote.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you like about living where you live?
Um, Accessibility to recreation. I'm close to most of my extended family that's still with us. Um, the state that I live in has more geographic and also geophysical features than anywhere else. I can leave a meeting in the city that I most typically work in and be skiing at one of 7 ski areas within 20 to 35 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool because work life balance could be done. And also when I ski, I always have a laptop or a iPad with me, and if I need to engage in work, I can just pull it out of the padded backpack and do what I got to do. That's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Yeah. No, that is cool. Yeah. Yeah. Um, what's who's your best friend?
Well, the default is of course my wife, but I have 4 to 6 friends that I've been engaged with and still do
Yeah.
things with for 40, 50 years. And
So give me the name of one of those people.
well, it's funny because I haven't seen him for 7 years. His name is James Dahlgren.
Okay.
He's an artist. He's 62 and two-ish.
Yep.
He moved out from Beloit, Wisconsin to where I live in the early 80s. And you know how you have a friend that even if you don't see them for
Oh yeah.
years,
You're
you're
just
immediately back in the place?
yeah.
That's him.
Yeah. So if
Another
I
one is,
called if I called James right now, just called him on the phone
uh-huh.
and said, "Hey, tell me about this guy," and what would he say is your best trait?
Probably my memory for events, friends, and openly giving of referrals to people when I know the ability that this person has and this person has. I will literally physically grab them, put them together, give them each a bio from my perspective, and just say go. And they realize, knowing me, that oh, he's doing this for a reason, and
Sure.
that's resulted in that behavior's probably resulted in 30 or 40 companies.
And what's the thing that he would say is your detriment?
Now or then?
Let's say now. I mean, let's say now.
Um, Probably the same thing that I said earlier about my willingness to
Let's,
give and
yeah.
without reciprocity. But
Yeah.
40, 50 years ago, let's just say it was the 80s, and that's one of the reasons I'll never run for office in the state that I live in. No said.
There you go. That's it. It's easy. Um, if you were if let's say I was starting a company and I came to you and said, tell me the one thing that I need to know, what would you tell me?
Well, I'd need to audit what your needs are, discuss what it is you believe that you need to know, find out what it is that you're doing, what the lens is in the audience, and then I'd provide at that time an objectionable choice. A given thing that I always say to anybody is I'll give you 15 minutes. And
Yeah.
after about 15 minutes, if I think you've got something you need to work on, I'll tell you. If it's something I can introduce you to someone, I'll tell you. And if it's something I'm interested in, we can carry on the conversation. Otherwise, it's just networking.
Yeah. 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 Very cool. Well, that's good. That's a good response, actually. Um, what was the mistake in the last 20 years that you think you learned the most from?
I made a lapse of judgment with a group that I aligned with a couple of years ago that weren't doing things the right way. And
Hmm.
they were doing some things that were against the integral core values that I have. I would not have aligned with them.
Yeah. And what did you learn from that?
Make sure that you vet people before you make a significant commitment that could affect your reputation as well as burn your time.
Yeah. 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 And do you think, because you meet a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Do you think the person, the people that you meet, have they changed any in your perspective about networking, about like creating this, creating what you and I would call our network, right? Like because it does take an effort. It doesn't happen naturally. I mean, it can happen naturally, but it doesn't go very well unless you kind of focus on some things, right? Do you think the people you've talked to in the last 5 years have their opinions and things changed any?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, number one, I'm a constant victim of ageism. There's a sector of individuals that I perceive that wouldn't ever consider talking to me because I'm old.
Sure.
And so I've done everything I can to be able to influence some of the groups and user groups that are in there, with starting at the top of any time I might be speaking with them. I'm working with an angels group right now that's doing that. Is I won't discount you for your youth and inexperience, and that's a direct quote from Ronald Reagan, if you won't discount me for the mistakes that I've made and the insights that I can share.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
What do you think the I know I'm going to take I'll take a different spin on this. Give me an embarrassing moment in your life give me a story that I will remember.
um, when I was getting into the bar business, it was purely serendipity because I wanted to, well, hook up with a ski chick.
Yeah.
And I was working as a volunteer at a festival that we'll probably discuss later on. And
Yeah.
there was a premiere that was occurring for that festival with one gentleman that was in Taps and one gentleman that was in Fast Time at Ridgemont's High. One would typically be a stoner, the other one would be typically, well, you know who I'm talking about.
Sure. Yeah.
Timothy and Sean.
Yeah.
And so she was intrigued with meeting Timothy. And so I took a kind of over the top with that, knowing that both of them were fans of punk rock, as I was at the time. The Dead Kennedys and Black Flag were playing the evening before their premiere of their show, The Falcon and the Snowman. So
Yeah.
to show it to that girl that I could do this, we booked the second night for a gas gig up in a park. Excuse me, up in a community.
Yeah.
And I ended up with my first ring in the bar business, about 30 grand, by doing temporary permits. I was 20. I wasn't of age. And she went home with one of those individuals because I don't want to
Sure.
incriminate them, and not
Exactly.
me. But
Yeah.
so
Totally.
from a memorable standpoint, that's how I truly got into the bar, restaurant, and hospitality business, was for the want of a girl.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's you're not the first person. Not the first person to do that.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Let me see if you of all the people that you have known, including your family, whose death would be most disturbing to you
Right now,
right now?
a gentleman named Bassam Salam. He's a mentor of mine. I would fill a void when he was gone, just because of the sophistication of his thought processes and not being able to hang out with him anymore. Obviously, my wife, any of my
Well,
children,
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
anything else like that. But when it comes to a contemporary and someone that I truly care for and respect, it'd be if all of a sudden I found out Bassam had been in an accident and was gone.
Yeah. That's good. How would you feel if he was gone?
Empty, and I'd probably do everything I could to throw the biggest party that you've ever imagined.
If we met in December of 2025, what would you like to be celebrating?
The successful launch of a number of the projects that we're working on in the regenerative space with biomass, biofuels, and bioplastics, Basically, we're aligning with the oil and gas business, and where there's fouled water. 1 year from December of 2025 that some of the things that we're working on, hopefully with the Southwestern Sustainability Innovation Engine, would have come to fruition, and we would be able to have a forecast of hundreds of thousands of acres and thousands of jobs.
Well,
Because
yeah, that's very cool.
that's what we're doing right now.
What do
And of
you
course that the family, continues to thrive and put up with me.
exactly? What do you think you do in business today that is something that is a roadblock that maybe slows you down? Like, what's a thing? Call it a weakness, call it whatever you want, but like, what is in your business life? Do you believe maybe
It's
self-imposed
that
limit?
that one's simple because it's part of the fabric of my being. I'm bipolar. I've been institutionalized a number of times. I've got traits that are similar to neurodiversity, and the thing is that I can't turn the spigot off. There's sometimes where you don't need to leave it in the lobby, and so sometimes I'll be in a business meeting where my friends and cohorts, like Rob Slingerland, my partner that I work most with right now, will have a code word for me. And when he says that code word, I realize that it's time to just ramp down.
Yeah,
And
slow it down.
that's probably the biggest weakness, but it's also kind of my superpower as well because I think differently and I embrace things and I see things in colors and shapes that
Sure.
is different. So it's a good and a bad thing. But
Yeah,
I've certainly scared off more opportunity than I've ever accepted.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, Joel, why don't you give us the real introduction? Give us the story, who you are, really. What's the whole thing?
Hi, my name is Joel McKay Smith. My family has been in Utah since the 1850s. I've primarily worked in agriculture, mining, mineral exploration. I was in the hospitality industry for close to 20 years, and I still have many friends that I worked with over that period of time that I'm aligned with, which makes it nice when you come to Utah because if you need to have an event, I've got plenty of bars,
Sure.
restaurants, and places that you can go to. I've been involved with, I've lost count, the formation, failure, ongoing participation of hundreds of
It's great.
companies, ventures, organizations. I was early on part of the team that worked with Clint Betts and what is now Silicon
Well,
Slopes and
lost you there for
Start
a second.
SLC. I'm proud to acknowledge that I was involved with that. And as I'm now approaching 60 and I want to kind of wrap things up by the time I'm 70, I'm going to be spending my time working on different IP stacks that will allow us to be able to work in complement with carbon and petro fuels and everything else, but come up with ways to be able to use underutilized land, brackish water, things like produced water from oil fields, to be
Hmm.
able to create more natural carbonization versus just carbon credits, and to be able to provide opportunity in rural places to be able to have manufacturing and a perpetuation of what we need for energy, but without it being as consumptive.
Do you is Utah a? I mean, I know that the startup community's like got a huge push over the last 10 years. With Ryan Smith from,
And
I forgot the name of his start. The first company he had, the
Qualtrics, yeah.
Qualtrics. So yeah, I know you guys have done a lot of really interesting stuff. Do you- what do you think starting to become known for? When I'm looking for like an industry. Is it clean energy? Is there something that like you feel like it's become known for or becoming
Sure.
known for?
And becoming known for too. Number one, the whole reason we had the different generations of money going all the way back to Novell and WordPerfect to here is because nobody on the coasts would bring in money until people like Tim Draper and stuff like that in the early
Yep.
80s started coming through. We're really on our fifth wave now. SaaS, life sciences, biotech, um, anything financial. I mean, every single bank has their headquarters here. People don't realize it. The industrial banks all are in Utah. There's the only place that has more employees for Goldman Sachs in the entire world is New York City. So
I didn't know that. That's
yeah,
interesting. Really?
yeah. So fintech here is huge. A huge emerging market is that there's a realization with our bounty of minerals that we can have advanced materials that are very very important for the military industrial complex. And we have a new
Mm.
group here called 47G. We're industrious. We're the state of bees. We have, for the first time in my lifetime in the last 10 years, the topple point between a majority of Utahns being LDS, Mormon, Latter day Saints, is now lower than the rest of the populace. We have huge issues. We have growth issues and quality of life issues that come along with prosperity.
Oh, sure.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's an amazingly supportive area with many of these founders that have had their exits over the last 20 to 30 years that are reinvesting
Yep.
in
Putting
the
money back
community.
into it. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, there's good things, bad things with that type of prosperity, but at the same time, overall, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. And
Yeah.
there's really good people here that take care of themselves. Generational things. Now you've got really four different generations that are still part of the cap stack and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is. You're the success of the area. I mean, I think it's become. It's more. It has more notoriety. You know, the Silicon Slopes concept, like even the name, right, has some cachet to it. Um, where do you think it's, 10 years from now, if you look ahead, Joel, what would you say is going to be, hey, here's where I think it could be in 10 years? Like, what's your, put your forecaster hat on? And
Do you want me to be brutally honest about what could happen here?
yeah, absolutely. Because
The
there could
Great
be
the
some,
Great Salt Lake could dry up. We could have arsenic and all of the different dusts that come in. It could make Salt Lake City uninhabitable, and the prosperity would likely move out into the areas that aren't affected. But
yeah.
fortunately, there are things that are working towards taking away from that inland sea, going away. That won't be the case, but we still need to work on our particulates in our air. We need to use more mass transit, and quite frankly, we need to diversify our population density into areas that there's nothing left here to build. I mean, there's
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
maybe 600 acres in Salt Lake Valley, and Utah Valley to the south and Weber Davis to the north aren't much better. And affordable housing is a huge issue. So we just have to work collectively towards those things, but at the same time realize it's okay to have little micro cosmopolitan areas to distribute the air quality and everything else, because we have a fantastic transportation system here with two interstates and everything else, but it just takes time for that to
Yeah.
work out.
Yeah. I think like I said, I grew up, in high school and college in Grand Junction, which is just across the border. It's, 10 miles or whatever from Utah. And the weather there is really nice. I mean,
It is.
it's really nice. Like, people don't realize how nice the weather is, because it's not like, it doesn't get super hot. It doesn't get super cold. Like, obviously you're at the top of the mountain. That's different, but people don't live on the top of the mountain. So
Oh yes, we
how,
do.
so I guess, yeah, some of you do, but very few. So I just wonder, do you think that's a draw? Do you think people come there because of the weather? I mean, I know they come there because of the skiing. Like, there's people that move there just so, because like you say, they can live in the city and ski within a half hour.
Well, you basically have two seasons in Utah. You have winter and construction season. So yeah. People certainly come here, especially in Utah's Dixie, which isn't politically correct to say anymore. But the
Yeah,
St. George area and our national parks are absolutely amazing. Yes, people come
sure.
here for that. From a Salt Lake City standpoint, I don't know it would be the weather succinctly, but it would be the outdoor recreation, the things that you can do that are so close to our international airport.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, Is there any one thing you would want to tell yourself 20 years ago to make life maybe a bit easier for yourself? Like, if you could go back 20 years and say, younger Joel, this would be helpful.
I would have held on to some properties and
Okay.
had them be income properties. for sure. And I probably wouldn't have blown as much money and worked more on some, compound interest things besides what we've done. I'd just, my first child was born in 2000. Going back to 95, which is almost 30 years,
Yeah.
if I would have done some things differently, it just would have been a better place.
Yeah.
I should have listened to my parents and the adults that I grew up with.
Sure.
But I didn't even approach adulthood till I first got married, which was like
Yeah.
35.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this has been a pleasure. It's been quite interesting. If you just look at yourself, like look at your LinkedIn profile, let's just use that as a thing. Like, you don't know what you just don't know, right? You don't get that that doesn't ever tell the whole story, right? And people obviously think it does because it's your LinkedIn profile. But yeah, the difference of talking to you versus reading your LinkedIn profile is profound. Let's just say that there's a big difference between those two things. So I really enjoyed the 45-ish minutes we spent, and yeah, I just think that that this is why we do these things, is we get to talk to people we enjoy listening to or meeting just in general. And I would say that's the case here. It's like I really enjoy just hearing you talk. Like some interesting stuff going on in your head, right? So
My credo is really simple, Mike. You got to give to get.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's you know about Startup Grind. I when I started that's a big thing when I Startup Grind. It's like, hey, give first, ask second, right? Like that's the model. That's why Startup Grind's done so well over the years. But well, again, thank you for being here. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Keep up the good work. You're doing some good things for, all humanity, not only Joel, but your people around you. So Well, that's a wrap on another episode of Whose Story Is It? We grow our audience mostly through friends sharing with friends. So please share this with a friend you care about. And of course, share it on your social media. We love that. Also, if you think listening to the podcast was entertaining and valuable, then please subscribe to next week's episode. So keep moving it forward and join us next time as we continue to uncover the extraordinary in the ordinary. Have an amazing day.